Hello and welcome. Federal government lists more conditions for social media operations in Nigeria, says Twitter has reached out to it for dialogue as National Assembly Minority Caucus asks Nigerians to keep tweeting. Federal lawmakers move to give legal backing to security outfits set up in states. Bill scales second reading in the House of Representatives. Judiciary workers suspend their 2-month-old strike to demand financial autonomy in states as polytechnic lecturers also end their industrial action after 65 days. And US reportedly plans provision of 500 million doses of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine to about 100 countries over the next 2 years. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, and later on international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, National Pension Commission to begin online verification in July for about 11,000 federal government employees set to retire in 2021.
On sports news tonight, defending champion Rafa Nadal reaches a record-extending 14th French Open semi-final after outclassing Argentina's Diego Schwartzman.
And from the nation's capital, House of Representatives to investigate federal government loans to farmers from 2009 till date, asks the CBN to prevent further depreciation of the naira.
Days after the suspension of Twitter operations in Nigeria, the federal government says the microblogging site has reached out to it for dialogue. The Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, announced this today after the Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja. He says the ban has so far been effective and Twitter must register as a business concern in Nigeria as part of conditions to be met before the suspension placed on its operations can be lifted.
What we are saying is that all platforms, OTT platforms, you must register in Nigeria. You must be a corporate entity before you can do business in Nigeria. Because they are doing business in Nigeria. Whether it's Netflix, whether it's Iroko, whether it is Facebook, they are doing business in Nigeria and they are making money and they are not paying taxes. That's the reasons. And in addition to being able to regulate them, they are making billions of naira out of this country and we are not paying tax. That can't be allowed to go on. Yes, as to the second question, yes, it is true. They've reached only this morning. I got communication that yes, they are now ready to hold senior level discussions with us. Just now, I can confirm. I just confirmed with my colleague now. Yes, I just got the information. Oh, why not? We will. But our conditions have already laid out to you. One, to do business in Nigeria, they must register as Nigerian companies. 2, they must be licensed. 3, they will have to refrain from using the platform for activities that are inimical to the growth of Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the main opposition party, PDP, is still voicing its displeasure over the ban on Twitter. Today, the Joint Minority Caucus of the Senate and the House of Representatives asked Nigerians to ignore the suspension. In a joint statement, the lawmakers says it is agonizing that Nigeria has been losing billions of naira on a daily basis since the ban on Twitter. And according to them, it's completely unacceptable as it's worsening the economic hardship and unemployment level in the country. The statement reads in part, as lawmakers, the Joint Caucus is pained by the anguish Nigerians, especially the youths, who find the use of Twitter as a means of livelihood and genuine social interaction are passing through, just because the APC-led federal government feels slighted that an individual's post was deleted by Twitter for ethic violation. It adds that the ban on Twitter in Nigeria appears to be in favor of criminals and terrorist elements whose activities fester in an environment of suppressed information flow. The caucus advised the federal government to settle whatever issue it has with Twitter instead of inflicting pains on Nigerians. And for the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, the suspension of Twitter by the federal government is reminiscent of the years of military rule when decrees held sway in the country. Mr. Falana says in a democracy, the government is not permitted to resort to self-help when disputes arise. He also urged those in the political class who feel their rights have been violated to seek redress through legal means, but encourage Nigerians to continue to defend their rights to expression.
I was also reminded of where we were in 1984 when we were told under Section 3 of this Constitutional Suspension and Modification Decree signed by the then Minister of State, General Muhammadu Buhari, that a law could be made either by through broadcast or through any other means. And here we are being told now that it's a law and that Nigerians can be tried under a law that has not been enacted by the National Assembly. So we're fully back to an era whereby the provisions of Chapter 4 can no longer be said to be in force in our country. And for me, that was very terrible for me. In a constitutional democracy, the government is not permitted to resort to self-help. All the members of the political party, whether you are in or outside power, must appreciate that Nigerians fought for their right. And that was why the Court of Appeal said, in the case of Oton Nwankwo and the state, that those who are in power, who may feel irascible by publications in the media, should learn to go to court to sue for libel, where they will put their own character in issue. But on no ground should Nigerians allow the government to, abridge the freedom of expression that we have fought for. Because according to the court, criticism is indispensable in a democratic society or in a constitutional democracy.
Nigeria appears to have taken a step into a favorable technological future as 12 indigenously made mobile phones were presented to the president today. The mobile phones, produced by the Model Skills Training Center of the Industrial Training Fund, an agency under the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, were presented to the president by the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Adeniyi Adebayo, before the commencement of the Federal Executive Council meeting.
President Muhammadu Buhari arrives to join members of the Federal Executive Council for the weekly meeting. It's a lean number as the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, 4 ministers, among others, witnessed the presentation of the first indigenously made mobile phone presented by the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. After the meeting, the minister further explains that Nigeria carves a niche for herself with the introduction of the locally made phones.
That was made by the Model Skills Training Center of the Industrial Training Fund. It's no different from any other mobile phone. They're trying to mass produce it. This is the beginning. This is the first one that they have made. I'm sure they will go on to try to see what they can do with regards to charging without having to use conventional power sources.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance announced the approval of 895.84 billion naira as the 2021 draft supplementary budget for military hardware procurement and COVID-19 vaccines.
The total of this expenditure is made up of 83.56 billion for COVID-19 vaccine program, covering 30 billion vaccines from Johnson & Johnson and the logistics costs relating to the deployment of that 30 million vaccines. In line with this approval, we have been also given approval to draw down on some existing World Bank loans totaling about 39.58 billion as part of the financing source for this supplementary budget. We've also been given approval to withdraw 135 billion from some special reserve levy accounts to part fund this supplementary budget, but specifically related to COVID-19 vaccine, salaries, and other health-related expenditure, as well as the recurrent component of the defense and security expenditures.
The approval also includes additional borrowings to the tune of 722.53 billion naira for security expenditure sourced from the domestic and international capital markets. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The president is expected to visit Lagos tomorrow for the inauguration of a 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan standard rail project at the Mobolaji Johnson Railway Station in Ebute-Metta. Thereafter, President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to proceed to the Energy Nature Light Terminal of the Apapa Port to commission the Integrated National Security and Waterway Protection Infrastructure, also known as the Deep Blue Project. The Minister of Transportation had earlier explained that the project aims at ensuring seamless movement of cargo from the Apapa seaport via train to help decongest the ports. The President is expected back at the presidential villa later tomorrow. And the former President Olusegun Obasanjo has been speaking up against agitators of disintegration of the country, saying that it will be wrong for Nigeria to disintegrate at a time when Africa is trying to reintegrate for political, social, and economic development. Chief Obasanjo insists that the country is better together for all the ethnic groups to remain together as one indivisible nation with fairness and equity, and where all Nigerians will feel proud rather than for each tribe to go its separate way. He made the comments at an event in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital.
The drum that we are hearing, the beating of the drum, is a drum of disintegration. And I like what the orator read about my citation. I am a strong believer in one Nigeria. But let me say this, it's not one Nigeria at any cost. It must be one Nigeria where every Nigerian can feel proud that he has a place. Because no Nigerian is born a slave in this country. No Nigerian is born to be oppressed in this country. And those of us who have shed part of our blood and sweated for this country, we did it because we want a country that every Nigerian can claim to be his or her own. If we speak to ourselves and talk among ourselves the way we should talk among ourselves, rather than talking to ourselves, we talk with ourselves. If we change the narrative, this is a great country that God has given to us. And that we are not getting it, we are not making Nigeria what God has created it to be. It's not the fault of God. It's the fault of ourselves, particularly our leaders.
In part two, after the break, Inspector General of Police cautions against violent protests, urges police personnel to prevent stations being overrun again. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government lists more conditions for social media operations in Nigeria, says Twitter has reached out to it for dialogue as National Assembly Minority Caucus asks Nigerians to keep tweeting. Federal lawmakers move to give legal backing to security outfits set up in states. Bill scales second reading in the House of Representatives. Judiciary workers suspend their 2-month-old strike to demand financial autonomy in states, as polytechnic lecturers also end their industrial action after 65 days. And US reportedly plans provision of 500 million doses of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine to about 100 countries over the next 2 years. Despite the ongoing amendment to the 1999 Constitution, a bill to give legal security outfits to complement the Nigeria Police Force has scaled second reading in the House of Representatives. The sponsor of the bill, Anthony Afe, says it's become necessary to amend the Constitution to allow for state security outfits which will address the security situation in the country.
Some of the provisions sought to be injected into the Nigerian Constitution as amended by way of amendment are clear provisions seeking to provide legal backing for the creation of state security outreach as a way of complementing the Nigerian police force. The rampant and widespread violence crime in every nook and cranny of the country has no doubt overwhelmed the Nigerian police as presently structured both in personnel capacity as well modus operandi. Mr. Speaker and fellow members, the embedded security challenge makes it imperative for the scope of policing to be expanded to make the state government and council play a defined and more active role in funding and pulling personnel who are expected to be more knowledgeable about their environment in the key aspect of intelligence gathering and crime busting and other crimes defined as federal crimes under the proposed new police architecture, as envisaged in proposed constitutional amendment.
The former Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Ike Ekweremadu, says it's extremely dangerous to play politics with the security situation in the southeast region. Senator Ekweremadu notes that the aim of those accusing some leaders of the region of not speaking out is political. In a statement, Senator Ekweremadu says, "I have come to the realization that those making the statements are only playing politics with a very serious matter. The objective is to lay the foundation for the harassment and possible destruction of the opposition in the southeast ahead of the 2023 general elections." The leader of the Southeast Caucus in the Senate, who highlighted the efforts made in both the 8th and 9th Senate, believes that what's needed at this time is pragmatic leadership and patriotism devoid of political or personal ambition. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has warned officers and men of the Lagos State Police Command not to allow themselves or their stations to be overrun again, either due to what he described as lack of professionalism or cowardice. The police chief gave the warning today in Lagos during his tour to the Police State Command, where he also encouraged the officers to improve on the area of crowd control, riot management, and the use of firearms in accordance with the acceptable norms of discharging their duties.
One area that we need to improve on is the issue of crowd control, riots, so that you go back to the agreed or accepted norms of discharging these duties and responsibilities. We must also be civil but firm in our discharge of our responsibilities at all times. never again do we allow our stations and our personnel to be overrun to the extent that we will not be able to handle situations that can easily be handled because of lack of professionalism or cowardice or whatever.
The Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria has suspended its industrial action after over 2 months. The union had on April the 6th embarked on a strike, shutting down all courts nationwide to demand financial autonomy for the judiciary in states. The union said in a statement that the decision to call off the strike follows extensive discussions and the intervention of the NJC and other stakeholders in the matter. JUSN is, however, pleading with the National Judicial Council, the Presidential Implementation Committee, the Attorney General of the Federation, and other stakeholders to ensure that the issue of financial autonomy is finally laid to rest. They, however, condemned the decision by the governors of Kaduna, Plateau, and Benue states for withholding salaries of judiciary workers in their states for months and pleading with them to do the needful. Meanwhile, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics has also suspended its 65-day-old strike for 3 months, effective from tomorrow. The union says the decision follows an appraisal of the report, indicating the gradual implementation of the items contained in the Memorandum of Action signed between ASUP and the federal government. According to the union, the release of funds for infrastructure, revitalization, and minimum wage appears currently being processed. ASUP also says it acknowledges the recent passage of the bill for removal of dichotomy against HND holders in the country. Let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Terry Ikumi. Terry?
Hello, Ijoma. The House of Representatives is mandating its committees on finance and agriculture to investigate the federal government's disbursement of loans and credit facilities to farmers from 2009 till date. The House observes that since 2009, 275 billion naira is said to have been disbursed to farmers, yet the country cannot boast of food sufficiency. The House is also concerned that most farmers have not been able to access the loans due to stringent procedures by banks. It's Wednesday's plenary session in the House of Representatives. Lawmakers consider a number of investigative motions, one of which is the federal government's agricultural loans and credit facilities to farmers since 2009.
Aware that since the approval, most farmers have not been able to access the loans due to stringent requirements being demanded by banks from prospective borrowers, and the alleged siphoning of over 105 billion naira meant for farmers by management of the NISAL.
The House also considers a matter of urgent public importance on the need for the Central Bank of Nigeria to urgently put in place monetary policies to stop the free fall of the naira.
Worried that enormous and rapid devaluation may scare off international investors, it makes investors less willing to hold government debt because it effectively reduces the actual value of their holdings. Mr. Speaker, the House therefore resolves, 1, to urge this honorable House to direct the CBN to urgently put in place a policy to check further devaluation of the naira, direct the House Committee on Banking and Currency to ensure compliance, as well as report back to the House for 2 weeks, in 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, a Senate bill for an act to amend the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria Act is stepped down by the House after members questioned the clause which allows banks to recover loans by taking over properties traced to debtors, whether or not such asset or property was used as collateral for the loan.
This new bill empowers the Commission to go after any other property that you have that was not initially part of the agreement. And I think that this issue was raised, and we need to know what has been done before we concur.
Mr. Speaker, I also believe that some of the concerns raised here are germane and genuine. So in order for us not to throw the baby along with the bathwater, I, as mover for the second reading of this bill, would like to step down this bill and interface more with the Senate.
The bill was passed by the Senate in April, despite disagreements on the same recovery clause by senators. The Senate has directed its committee on INEC to screen for confirmation the appointment of Loretta Onoche and 5 others as INEC commissioners. The directive comes months after President Muhammadu Buhari forwarded the list of the nominees to the Senate for screening. There has been opposition and criticism of the nomination of Loretta Onoche, who is a special assistant on social media to President Buhari, for the INEC appointment. The opposition PDP had opposed her nomination, alleging that she is a card-carrying member of the All Progressives Congress. When the news at 10 returns, National Pension Commission to begin online verification in July for federal government employees set to retire in 2021. That's on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. On Friday, 11th of June, the 9th National Assembly will be marking its second anniversary since its inauguration. The Senate held a special session today to commemorate the first half of the life of the 9th Assembly. Our correspondent, Linda Akigbe, reports.
The Senate is holding this special session to mark the second anniversary of the 9th Senate, and it provides the opportunity for stock-taking and assessment of its legislative interventions in the last 2 years. When the 9th Assembly started, the Senate developed a legislative agenda with focus on the economy, security, constitution amendment, judicial and electoral reforms.
I'm sure that governance will be improved.
At the special session, Senate President Ahmad Lawan says the upper chamber is on track in fulfilling its legislative agenda.
About 742 bills were introduced during the 2 sessions of the Assembly, of which 58 have been passed. 355 bills have gone through first reading. 175 bills have gone through second reading. One of our most significant interventions in this sector is the restoration of the national annual budget to the January to December cycle.
The refrain from majority of the lawmakers at this special session is that the Senate has performed well, but they are mindful of the problems still confronting the country.
Since we came here from day one, we've been confronted with the serious issues of insecurity in this country. And what have we done? We set up a committee headed by the leader of the Senate, and far-reaching resolutions were passed by these chambers that were sent to the executive. The fact that those actions were not taken, or rather the resolution were not implemented, is not our fault.
While the senators give themselves a pass mark, 2 public analysts disagree with them.
From the evidence, irrefutable evidence before all Nigerians, they have not performed well, because if they have done so, we wouldn't have these killings. If they perform well, we wouldn't have these kidnappings. What statement have they made on the Twitter ban? Absolutely nothing.
Have they passed the electoral bill? They have not. Have they changed the Electoral Act? No. 2 years, they have not been able to do that. What have they been doing? Did they pass the PIB? No.
It's 2 more years until the expiration of the 9th Assembly, and in the time left, Nigerians would want to see the Senate be more responsive to the issues troubling citizens, enact important legislations like the Petroleum Industry Bill and Electoral Act, and demonstrate more commitment to legislative business. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
The Rivers State Governor, Nyesom Wike, has flagged off the reconstruction of another project in the state in continuation of the series of projects commissioning to mark his 6th year in office. The event today saw the governor visiting Bo, the headquarters of Gokana local government area, to lay the foundation stone for the rebuilding of a foremost government secondary school in the community, which he says has been abandoned for far too long.
Like a Thanksgiving service, the chiefs, women and youths of Gokana local government area of Rivers State are defying the rain to give a rousing reception to Governor Nyesom Wike and his entourage in Paul, their council headquarters. The governor is here to lay the foundation stone for the reconstruction of the government secondary school Gukana, built in 1976 but abandoned. For Governor Wike, the award of the contract is in line with a vision to provide quality education to the people of Rivers State and preserve the legacy of infrastructure development.
You know, in this part of our country, or in this country as we have it, we believe that we must destroy to make our own name. If you don't destroy, you believe you cannot make a name. These are schools that produce prominent Nigerians and Rivers people. All we are doing is to bring all these schools down and build our own to say that we built.
Before laying the foundation stone, the special guest and the senator representing the area appreciates the governor's efforts in developing the Ogoni ethnic nationality.
Your Excellency, in complementing what you are doing, we just started the process of providing exercise books for all the secondary schools in my senatorial district. Today is the turn of government secondary school, but they have 2,000 exercise books to pick here today, Your Excellency.
With at least 2 hostel blocks of 288 bed capacity each, 24 blocks of classrooms, workshops, laboratories and staff quarters, students and teachers here can anticipate a more excellent learning experience.
Residents have commended the efforts of Adamawa state government over its rural and urban renewal projects embarked upon by the current administration. According to them, the failure of previous administrations in the area of infrastructure development is responsible for its backwardness. They say the giant strides witnessed under the current PDP government in the state, despite dwindling resources, is opening up Adamawa state to investors.
The people of Adamawa State have every reason to smile following the massive transformation gradually being witnessed across the 21 local government areas. Governor Umaru Fintiri has been commissioning rural and urban renewal projects for close to 2 weeks. As at the last count, about 347 kilometers of roads have been constructed in Numan, Michika, Hong and Yola South, while electrification projects are being enjoyed by various other communities. But the biggest of them all is the first flyover in the northeast in Yola. To the people of the state, these projects are opening up their communities.
Even the way to our general hospital before was dilapidated, but today it is an express road. The moment you see this road as if you are going to the international airport, we are proud of Fintiri because of what he has done in Michika local government.
Fintiri is a good leader that we can trust, that people have doubted him, doubted his capacity, but he's proving even the opposition wrong. Fintiri have given us a good leadership, quality leadership.
Governor Umaru Fintiri assures the people of his commitment towards improving their standard of living, ensuring that no one will be left behind and nothing will be left untouched.
This is in fulfillment of one of our cardinal points of the 11-point agenda towards ensuring that no one is left behind and nothing is left untouched. Being the state window to the outside world, investing heavily in the urban renewal of the state capital cannot be said to be a misplaced priority, but a deliberate plan that will benefit the current and indeed the future generation of this state.
The plan, according to the state government, is to use these rural and urban renewal projects to further unlock the agricultural and other economic potentials of benefiting communities, thereby setting the pace for better economic growth across the state.
And that's all from the nation's capital. Now to business news with Anne Mwaodu.
Thank you, Terry. Hello and welcome to Business News. The National Pension Commission says it will commence the annual retirement verification of about 11,000 federal government employees in Treasury-funded ministries, departments and agencies set to retire this year. Speaking on the sideline of a workshop for pension desk officers in Lagos, PENCOM's Commissioner Ayim Nyerere says that the exercise scheduled for July this year will be done online due to the impact of COVID-19 on physical capturing exercise in 2020. The Senate has asked the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to sustain its efforts in enforcing transparency and stamping out corruption from its system. According to a statement by the corporation, the chairman, Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes, Senator Sulaiman Kwari, gave the charge at a hearing in Abuja. It also adds that the efforts by the NNPC's management towards profitability was commended, asking the corporation to sustain the gains recorded in the oil sector. And let's head to the local equities market. The market sustained positive momentum today. Investors are still having appetite for bellwether stocks, pushing the index to its peak since May the 17th. Uvie Bikomo has a summary for us.
It's the midweek trading session and the bull decides to show up again today, and this time more dominating. The all-share index was up almost 1%. Basically, alpha-seeking investors have continued to rotate their portfolio towards equities amid moderation in the uptick of yields in the fixed income market. Also, we're seeing early birds positioning in dividend-paying stocks ahead of the half-year 2021 dividend declarations. Look at the sectoral indices, all in the green, with the industrial sector leading the pack. Overall, investors churned out 181.52 million shares, valued at almost 4 billion naira in 3,217 deals. 2 more trading days to go. Let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that the bull keeps the flag flying. I'm Uvie Bikomo. That's all for the stock market.
Thank you, VA. Stocks in the United States were all negative today, ending today's trading ahead of release of key inflation data. Here are the closing numbers for today. And with those numbers, we'll end Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Mwaodu. It's back to you, Joma.
Thanks, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, U.S. reportedly plans provision of 500 million doses of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine to about 100 countries over the next 2 years. Plus other international news from our studio in London. Please stay with us.
Like to kaku. Every day must do kaku. Yeah, if you want help me go kaku. If you want save me go kaku. Every time he like to reason. Even free things he go over easy. Glow is there for you in every season. You don't have to over easy. Glow, better get that. Glow, oh that better. Glow, better get that. Glow, oh that better. Glow, better get that.
You don't have to be a Mr. Kaku when it comes to data. Get a Glow MiFi for 12,000 naira and get up to 60 gigabytes data free.
The Masses Deep Blue, the integrated national maritime surveillance and security infrastructure, Our platforms are ready. Special mission aircraft, special mission helicopters, unmanned aerial vehicle, special mission vessels, interceptor boats, armored vehicles, special forces and the C4I Center. Official flag off on Thursday 10th June 2021 by President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Chief Host, Right Honorable Rotimi Amici, Minister of Transportation. The Masses Deep Blue, Calmer Coast and Safer Seas. Security is priority. The Integrated National Maritime Surveillance and Security Infrastructure. Powered by NAMASA.
Welcome back. The U.S. government has announced it will be donating 500 million doses of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine to 92 lower-income countries and the African Union. About 200 million doses will be distributed this year, with the remainder delivered in 2022. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US Treasury Department has asked authorities to investigate the disclosure of tax records cited in a media report that showed that some of America's richest people paid little to no income tax. ProPublica said it obtained a vast trove of Internal Revenue Service data on the tax returns of some of the country's wealthiest individuals. The data indicated that billionaires, including Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and Tesla founder Elon Musk, paid no federal income taxes over several years.
There is more to be done to ensure that corporations, individuals...
The White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that any unauthorized disclosure of confidential government information was illegal. Israel says a media building destroyed by one of its airstrikes in the recent Gaza conflict was being used by the Hamas militant group. The Jala Tower housed the offices of the Associated Press and Al Jazeera. AP news agency said it had not seen evidence to support Israeli allegations that militants were operating there. Israel Defense Forces said that Hamas was using the building to try to jam its Iron Dome missile system. The militant group denied it had offices in the building. Authorities in Nicaragua have arrested 2 more potential presidential candidates in the run-up to elections later this year. Felix Maradiago and Juan Sebastian Chamorro have been accused of terrorism and plotting against Nicaragua's sovereignty and independence. They were held under a controversial new security law passed in December by President Daniel Ortega. The US branded Mr. Ortega a dictator following the arrests. El Salvador has approved a law to classify Bitcoin as legal tender, making the Central American nation the first in the world to do so. A majority of lawmakers voted in favor of the initiative to create a law that will formally embrace the cryptocurrency, despite concerns about the potential effect on El Salvador's program with the International Monetary Fund. The government said that the use of Bitcoin, whose use will be optional, would not bring risks to users. Its use as legal tender will go into law in 90 days' time. Taliban insurgents have shot dead at least 10 mine clearers working in Afghanistan's northern province of Baghlan and wounded more than a dozen. Afghan officials blamed the Taliban, saying militants started shooting everyone in the Halo Trust compound. Violence has sharply increased across Afghanistan since the US announced plans in April to pull out all of its troops by September the 11th. The Taliban are fighting government troops in 26 out of 34 provinces, and the insurgents have recently captured more than 10 districts. More than 30,000 nurses in New Zealand have walked off their jobs in a nationwide 8-hour strike after negotiations with the government for better pay and working conditions failed. The strike action came after the New Zealand Nurses Organisation rejected a 1.4% pay hike proposed by the District Health Board earlier this week. The government says the nurses' demands amounted to a 17% increase that it can't afford, but pledged to continue negotiations. A British charity group has said that dozens of children, most of them girls, have been abducted by jihadist groups over the past year in Mozambique. The group Save the Children says at least 51 children have been abducted amid violence and insecurity that has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. The charity has expressed concern that such abductions were a new and alarmingly regular tactic by armed groups involved in the conflict. Opposition MPs in Namibia have attacked the government for its recent settlement with the former colonial power Germany. The deal saw Berlin acknowledge that it had committed genocide against the Herero and Nama ethnic groups and pledged €1.1 billion for their welfare today. During the parliamentary session, one opposition legislator said there'd be no chance to undo the economic trauma caused by the genocide. German colonial forces wiped out more than half of the Nama and about 80% of the Herero population. And finally, a US chocolatier is selling a new sweet that has caused quite a bit of controversy: cicadas covered in chocolate. The employees gather the cicadas from trees behind the shop. The bugs are then placed in a paper bag and put into a freezer. They are then boiled to clean them before being crisped in an air fryer. Once the cicadas have been fried, employees then sprinkle them with either cinnamon or Old Bay, and they are then covered in chocolate. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
And the main news again. The federal government today listed more conditions for the social media operations in Nigeria. The Minister of Information and Culture said Twitter has reached out to the federal government for dialogue as the National Assembly Minority Caucus asked Nigerians to keep tweeting. Also today, federal lawmakers moved to give legal backing to security outfits set up in states as the bill scaled second reading in the House of Representatives. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Hunyato. Good night.